Next up, we're going to have another fantastic panel. We're going to be featuring members from Memberstack, Bildr, VisionX, and Backendless. The panel will be hosted by Brent Summers. And on this panel, we're going to be learning about bridging the gap between code and no code. We'll touch a bit on the topic of no code versus code, and if no code tools can actually work with code tools, and how. Brent, do we have you?
Yes, can you hear me?
Fantastic, hear you loud and clear. Really looking forward to this panel, Brent.
Same here. Yeah, I'm very excited, and the age-old debate of code versus no code is one we've heard time and time again, and the refreshing thing that we've started to hear more recently is what happens when code can work with no code to make things get built faster. So looking forward to this chat. Fantastic. So before we dive into kind of the meat of the discussion here, let's just go around and introduce you one by one. So Duncan, let's start with you.
All right. Hi, my name's Duncan. I'm a co-founder and designer at Memberstack. And I guess the short version on Memberstack is we help you add user accounts and payments to a website or web app.
Fantastic. Mark?
Mark Pillar. I'm founder and CEO of Backendless. We provide a platform that can be a backend for your mobile or web application, or you can build full-blown apps without any code, including front end and the back end. Super
cool. Drew?
Hey, I'm Drew Thomas. I'm with Bildr, and I'm actually filling in for Mark today, Mark Magnuson. Bildr is for websites and web apps, and it goes pretty deep as far as bridging into that code side, deeper than a lot of other web app builders.
Awesome. Thanks for filling in, and you've made my job easier because now we don't have two people named Mark.
True.
And Roland?
Hi, my name is Roland. I'm the founder of Visions. We built the product, the local platform VisionX. And VisionX is a very open, flexible platform where we have really no limits because we can go back and forth with visual design and code.
Very cool. All right. Well, thanks for the intro. And my name is Brent. I've been building apps with Bubble since about 2015 and built the first educational platform that was actually acquired by Zeroqode back in 2018. And so, that's where I'm coming from. And let's dive into the chat. So the topic for today is what can we do with no code and code? And I kind of want to start out with what has become kind of this fierce debate that started all the way back, I'd say, in probably around 2012, when there was kind of this push, this original movement of everyone needs to learn to code. And that push was kind of, made, I think, even, presidents and heads of state were pushing, saying every single person needs to code. And obviously now 8 years later, that is not the case, as we're seeing a huge push with the no code world. So the first question I want to bring up with this debate, code versus no code, who should be learning to code these days? Who would want to take this one first?
I'll take it.
All right, Drew.
So I think when you talk about learning the code, people say code really generally. What people need to learn, in my opinion, is the code concepts and how things work, how software is built, that kind of thing. And maybe not as much about, the syntax of specific languages or that kind of thing. And so when people say learn to code, I think what they might actually mean is more the concepts. But what they're saying is learn the physical languages and learn that kind of thing, which, as we've seen, the languages more or less come and go. There's a few mainstays, but they come and go quickly. And now with no code, that might not even be important at all. And from where I stand, I would say learn code concepts, but not code.
That's a really great point. Yeah, the concepts are the things that are going to be foundational and stick around. Syntaxes will come and go. The new hot framework on the block, you can spend a couple of years learning it, and then the next one comes up, and then you're kind of in a tough spot. That's really great. Anyone else want to add on to what Drew said?
Yeah, I'd like to add and to say that being able to understand basic computing concepts, and not so much basic, because the deeper you understand the difference between data structures and how to model your data and how to describe your data in a way that it would be persisted in the database. The that will make you a more powerful code or no-code programmer, or a technical specialist that would be able to map entities and concepts that exist in the real world that your application is dealing with to the data structures that any particular tool provides to you in order to, just work with them from the logic perspective. And when I say logic, I kind of trying to abstract from the code, because with many tools, it's going to be a way to describe logic one way or the other through the visual paradigm.
Very good. Yeah, I totally agree. I think again, kind of getting back to those foundational concepts, whether you start out with code or no code, you need to figure out, how a database works and how a front end and a back end perform. And so kind of this gets to our next topic of what happens to new beginners who just want to start building an app today. And they're they might be overwhelmed just kind of hopping in and seeing no code and seeing coded solutions. So what should beginner makers do, when they first discover, okay, hey, here's tool 1, here's tool 2. How do they navigate this really complex world? How can their job be made easier?
So I can speak real quick. We're actually this is kind of a problem we have as a team, where folks of all backgrounds come to us and will say, I have this goal, right? I have this destination I want to get to, and here's where I'm at today. And they all have different starting conditions and slightly different destinations. And the answer is unique to each of them. And it depends a lot on what is that destination? What do you have now? What can you do now? What resources do you have? And then how much time do you have? But also, what is available today? It's we have a lot of people come to us who, just based on where they're at, will recommend other no-code tools, because those tools are better suited to do what they want to do. Or we'll have people come to us and say, I'm super young, I'm trying to pick a career, what should I start with? And it's oh, you're in a really fantastic spot. You can actually learn these coding concepts, learn to code, but also learn the no code. So it really just depends where you're starting. So asking is a great place to start. Asking folks who are doing this is a really good place to start.
Totally agree. Yeah, the idea of having access to all these no code tools as a beginner is super, super exciting. And as more and more come online, you really do find yourself in a bit of an information overload. So I really like that point of asking, and making sure that, if you aren't that experienced, you get pointed in the right direction by, those that actually have founded these companies and know the space really well, or experienced makers who have built apps in the space. Does anyone else want to add on to what Duncan said?
Well, if you are a beginner and just jumping into figuring out, whether you want to learn how to code or you want to learn how to use the tools that provide these capabilities without the code, I would just say stop and ask yourself, what is it that you actually want to accomplish? Is your goal to learn how to build apps? Is your goal how to build websites? Is your goal to become, maybe in a longer term, an architect where you can start composing more complex systems? So basically try to figure out what path you want to go through with specific micro goals that you establish. So if it is the websites, then just start understanding and learning the basic concepts. Go to sites like Udemy, or there is a ton of them, right? Where you can just start educating yourself on the basic concepts. Jumping right into finding in Google what's the best possible web building tool, and going in there, of course, you will be able to accomplish certain things. Will you be able to do it in the most educated fashion, really understanding if it is the website, what CSS styles are, and how to transform data from one page to another, how to persist all the state? You will have really no idea, and will start kind of accumulating this knowledge as you go, which is probably not the best possible way, just from the educational standpoint.
Yeah, that's a really great point. All right, so Roland, I want to turn to you now to kind of add on to how this discussion's been coming along. We've been talking a lot about the beginners and how they can get into building apps. What app ideas are best suited for no-code tools versus code tools? I know you've been working a lot with both. So, if someone comes to you and they're like, hey, I have this app idea, what criteria would you send them in the no-code versus coded direction?
In my opinion, I would always start with no code and low code at the end of the day, because I'm a coder since 30 years, so I can do the other stuff very in depth. But to be honest, coders tend to not focus on the solution. Yeah, even if they're in a startup in a big company, anyways, that's something that does not really help you at the end of the day, and they have to rethink in this area. So I think it's important you think about the solution, and that's better you start with a low-code platform. And yeah, sure, they have some limits somewhere, and then try to find a solution where you can go to code and extend it on code level. Because in my opinion, no-code, low-codes are great, but all of them has a limit. And that's okay, because the tool cannot do everything. It's impossible. It's too many variations of apps and web apps that you maybe can do, yeah? And then at the end of the day, it's in the beginning it looks easy, but it's getting complicated. And then it's important that you can change that, yeah, on code level from a real developer, a pro developer, or however you want to name it, yeah, and then go back to the tool and keep going, yeah. Because I think some complex things, it's more stuff for real developers, and the rest is for the local developers. And both is important to bring the solution out there. And from the apps and web, I'm saying web desktop and mobile apps that have some data in, or there are the app for the SaaS company that you founded or whatever. But I'm not focusing so much on games, because I think games is a different story. It's very more complicated to make it really run great. Let's think about making a Fortnite, yeah, with a local platform. It's a little tough, yeah. Maybe
Exactly.
or something. Yeah. There are other tools in the market with them you can do that, yeah. With game engine.
Totally. Yeah. If someone wants to build another Fortnite, I wouldn't suggest, no code from the start.
Yeah.
Well, that's really great.
That is not the best for low code, in my opinion. But I know a lot of people see this a little bit.
Yeah, no, definitely. And what I really liked what you said is, focusing on the solution versus focusing on how to build it. That's, a big mistake I think first time beginners make is they want to get in and they want to start building, and they fall in love with the process of building. But at the end of the day, if you're trying to build an actual app that has people using it, you need to focus on the problem that you're solving first. And so, that's I think one of the best benefits of no code is that the solution behind the scenes, it doesn't matter if it's all, pieced together with duct tape. As long as the solution is good and the people like it, then that's what ends up happening. So, the title of this talk is, extending no code with code. So I want to now start to get to, kind of the meat here of how can we start to extend this functionality, because as we all know, these tools are extremely useful, especially in getting started. And Roland, what I liked what you said is, if you can always start with no code or low code, that's fantastic. Let's say 6 to 9 months into building a project, a first time builder or someone who's pretty inexperienced, they start to hit a wall, right? And they have to start to extend their application using some sort of coded solution. The real question is, how can these coded additions be complementary and helpful without becoming an entire time drain that requires a computer science course? Drew, do you want to take this one first?
Yeah, I think I could probably answer this. I actually, as like a no coder, who I've been no coding for a long time and doing it like full time for client, only no code consultant for clients. When I first saw Bildr, they kind of opened my eyes up to some stuff that relates to this code no code, which two things. The first thing is extensibility. So what any of these platforms can do is like add extensibility, add ways for you to build, and then when you get stuck, ways that a coder can come in and help you out, that kind of thing. And one of the things that Bildr does with extensibility is like the way you create it is you take in any kind of code stuff you want. If you're a developer, you're doing code, you make it into something that's composed of like inputs and drag and drop for a user, and then it's a component. It's like shareable. So they kind of took this concept of extensibility and actually it becomes like a core component of how you're using this no-code tool, where you're using these and whatever, I don't know how to even say it, these components that are from outside, but you're using them natively like you would in anything else. So that was one thing, which kind of, to me, I was like, well, that makes sense. That's a great solution. It's a way to kind of like natively as a no coder, you know your program you're working in, and these outside things come in and they're not new, they're not different, they're exactly what you're used to, they're exactly the same setup. But then the other really big thing is that Bildr, unlike a lot of other tools I've seen, but some do this, it's kind of built on top of code and built on top of the web. So you're not actually like creating a column in Bildr. You're creating a div with a CSS property that makes it, put whatever's in it side by side. And so you're actually you're doing things in Bildr that write code. And so in that way, it becomes extensible by definition, because no one at Bildr has to give you permission to create some certain element. If you can create it in code, you can create it in Bildr. And so that in itself unlocks a huge amount where if you do no code, you can just do all kinds of things, whether it's custom things that wouldn't be in a no-code tool that are specific to your app, or whether it's like crazy things that you want to try that actually might break, even that kind of level where you can really push the limits.
That's awesome. So yeah, really touching on the extensibility from a UI UX level, where in the actual app that you're building that is no code, there is code being written, and so you can kind of go back and forth. And if you hit a wall and need to, let's say, have a developer take a look at things, or you want to dive in yourself, you can, and kind of get a little bit more granular. So that's great. And what about when you let's say you're in a no-code tool and you need to add another set of functionality. So a really common use case is you build a no-code front end. Let's say it's a website, and now you want to add a backend to it. And you basically want to now explore, how can you kind of plug things together? Maybe one's coded, one's no coded. How do we start to think about these intersections in a way that makes sense for new folks?
If I could answer just how we did it, okay? Because in our platform, we provide both front-end development capability and the back-end. And for about 99.9% of the use cases, the back-end is there and it's flexible enough to address the majority of the use cases based on what we see with our customers, what they're doing. However, one of the core elements that we have added almost pretty much right from the get-go is an ability to inject custom code into the backend. And that custom code can be injected in a variety of different ways, either in the form of API services that can be tapped into from your client side, in the form of timers that basically wake up and do something according to the schedule that you define, or in the whole API invocation chain. So for instance, when you save something in a database, you want to inject some logic that is executed before the data is committed to the database or right after. And in the no-code fashion, what we did is we provided an ability to do it without any code, where you can basically do it in a codeless way, just composing your server-side logic, or you can do it with Java or Node.js. So it's kind of best of both worlds, where if you are a developer and you feel comfortable with the code, we provide a way to do it with code on the server side. And if you don't want to mess with the code, you can do it completely in a 100% codeless manner.
That's great. Yeah. And one of the things that you touched on, kind of the API layer, right, of figuring out how things stitch together, that to me seems like a pretty core concept. That's something that one needs to really fully grasp before exploring how to get one of these tools to talk to another tool. So, one of my favorite examples here is just kind of the classic, Zapier using a webhook to kind of add functionality onto a platform, whether it's Bubble, Webflow, et cetera, and even if you don't know a lot about code, the idea of going out and getting a piece of data from another service via a webhook can be a really great way to start to get into the coded ecosystem. So, as someone, let's say, explores kind of these API ecosystems, what languages or frameworks would you suggest these builders explore? Should they dive right on into like a JavaScript tutorial? How can you start to learn some code to be complementary without getting completely overwhelmed by that ecosystem? Who wants to take that one?
I'd say they need to go for
Sure.
whatever gives them the biggest bang for the buck, okay? Where once you invest your time into learning a particular language or a framework, I would suggest to look for one that would make you more versatile developer. So for instance, if you were to invest time into JavaScript and Node.js, and you master that, you instantly become a full stack developer, because you can apply the learned skill of developing with JavaScript on the client side, and the same skill would be applicable on the server side in the form of Node.js. Another example would be, let's say, Flutter, right? If you learn Dart, which is the programming language behind Flutter, you can do it, you can apply that knowledge to develop mobile apps with Flutter, and you can do it to do web apps with Flutter Web. So which is also kind of, becomes a fairly wide range of things that you can do by learning one language and one framework.
Fantastic. Duncan?
Yeah, these are good. I love these answers. I love these. So one kind of, so if the assumption is that, yeah, the person who we're talking about in this example is like, yeah, they want to get into the code, they want to be able to actually build this stuff themselves, like actually be the one moving things around and making those, yeah, actually building it, then I think that makes total sense. I think that makes a ton of sense. Maybe like the kind of maybe counterpoint, or like this suggestion I'll throw out there, is that at the end of the day, if our goal is to create a product or to create a business or something, it's like no code is just relative to you. So you could get really good at building a team. You could get really good at solving people's problems and having them pay you for it. So then you can pay people to help you solve those problems. So at the end of the day, and here's like kind of a hopeful thing, not a hopeful thing, but an optimistic thing that I truly believe is that given enough time, like I think anybody could learn to code, right? Like they have the ability to, right? Anybody is smart enough to be able to do that. But I don't think everyone should, right? That would be a tremendous waste of resources and time and like passion people have for doing different things. So, but if that's something compelling to you, if that's what you were like, wake up and you're like, I want to do this, it's like, then you have a lot of different options. But at the end of the day, it's like, we want to build something that like people can use and makes their lives better and get there how you need to get there. And I love these answers that if you're the kind of person who wants to build these things, this is the way to go. It's like, you don't necessarily need to go and learn how to code at the beginning, but then like you'll be in a better place to do so once you started. So hope that makes sense. But
Yeah, no, that's great. And I totally agree that, not everyone needs to, become a super proficient JavaScript developer. And what you usually find out when you introduce people to code is some people, really have a passion for it, and it could be a great way to discover that they really do want to become a developer. And then others are like, man, this is just a means to an end. I really don't enjoy this. And that's the use case where said it might be better off. They might be better off building a team or using their time elsewhere. Roland, I saw your hand up. Did you have a response to that?
Yeah, I want to say something because of about learning coding, and I think what you said. I think not everybody has to learn to code. That's one thing, and I think the real local users are the thinkers, the makers, the builders, the guys that want to innovate, the entrepreneurs, also employees in companies who really want to come up somewhere, or to really want something to do because it's too boring and do all these things all day long. Stupid same way, and it's not really good. So these guys are the right person to learn that. I think to get a real professional developer, you should invest in a little more education than just a course. And it's not important which framework and which syntax. I think that's at the end of the day, after a while, it's all kind of the same after some years of coding. But the main thing you have to understand and to learn, and that's tough also for a lot of developers, in my opinion, after some years, is how you can transform things that are in the real world are happening, and you want to build code for that. I'll give you an example. When I learned coding from an old guy from IBM that learned it in the 50s, he told me the first thing you need to understand, you have to code, right, how to brush your teeth. So everybody knows how to brush the teeth. You start, I don't know on which side you start, up and down and low and inside or outside or whatever, but you have to go through all of them. You need a certain time of doing that it's getting really clean, how you use your, depending what toothbrush you're using, if you just move because you have an electric one or you have a manual one, anyway, and you have a complete exact program, what your parents tried to implement in your head, what was tough for some kids, yeah? I have 2 young kids. So, and then you can write that down in a piece of code. If you do it in the flow designer of a low-code tool, if you do it in JavaScript, TypeScript, Dart, Flutter, great thing. We love it. We use it for our mobile client. Our mobile client is Flutter native. But Flutter Web, I would not recommend at the moment. It's better, but it will be soon good. So it's the right thing to set on, but needs some weeks, months maybe. So, and I think when you can handle that, then you're the better low-code programmer or coder, whatever you name this guy. Citizen developer, would you say for that when you ask Gartner and so forth?
Yeah, no, I love that. It's not about the syntax. It's about, knowing the step by steps. So it's hard to believe, but I think we only have about 5 minutes left in this panel, and so I want to turn our attention toward the future, and kind of get everyone's answer to kind of where this is all heading. So, what are some predictions you have or things you're excited about in the no code and coded world and how everything's coming together? What are you excited about in what's emerging and what's to come? Duncan, do you want to go first?
I will defer if someone else wants to go first.
I'll start.
Go ahead.
Roland, if you'd like, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mark.
All right. So I believe that as time passes by, what's going to happen is the complexity of the applications that can be built without any code in a completely interactive visual manner will be increasing. So you will be able to create more and more complex applications without writing any code, okay? Because it's just the natural evolution of how things work, right? So originally you could do UIs with drag and drop, and then it would be just nothing but a UI without any logic in there. Then as time passed by, then you could start adding logic to the UIs and connect pages together where the information goes from one page to another. And then, time passed by and you could start integrating backend and so on. So obviously, as we can see, the complexity is increasing for the kind of things that you can do, which means that going back to the subject of this panel, the involvement of coders in the process of building applications will be over a longer period of time, but will be getting reduced. Of course, they will be needed for more hardcore things, the ones that the no-code platforms cannot provide out of the box. But I guess the natural evolution is that future applications in the future will be built completely just by composing things out of the smaller building blocks.
Great answer. Yeah, if we can break everything down to those Legos, then it will make it pretty easy for folks.
I can say that's I think the same way, kind of. Yeah, I said it yesterday also once. Yeah, I think the first thing is templates. The reason why is because if you can copy from something that you see it's working, it's very easier for a business developer or for a citizen developer than from a recoder can way better imagine and abstract everything in a generic way. Yeah. That's the one thing. The second thing, what you said, you need something of components or smart components or however you want to name it, where a normal user comes more far. Let's say a module that makes automatically audit logging for everything. You don't have to think about it. It's there. It's complicated to build something like that. That's for a recoder thing. But you as a citizen or a business developer, you just click it into it and then it's there. And from that, we need also some thousands of these elements. Yeah, that we are really smart and solve the right things. Because you cannot only do it with the templates, because they're very business specific, but you need business specific things and functionality specific things that combine in a way that you can build a lot of things. Yeah. So you need a pluggable technology in your local platform to make that possible. Yeah. And I think the third thing machine learning can help. A little hard to explain now how you can do that. But in my opinion, it can help if you do it right, that it helps the business developer make not so much mistakes because he's not knowing exactly how to bring everything together, that it works the way a pro coder would do it. You know what I mean? Because you can run in a complete wrong direction. You have an app, but you cannot maintain it everywhere. You cannot extend it anymore. That's the reason why, because you run in the wrong direction. Now you can just solve that with consultancy time from maybe the platform vendors or partners, but here it's a lot of more possible. Yeah. And
yeah, in a way,
the real believer in there is limit, and that's the reason why we made it possible that our platform generates real code in the background, and you can edit it and you can reverse engineer it live. With that, you can build a real complex system, but usually you can only do with pro code. But you can interact all together, you know? So it's like that you have like different roles in a big project. You have when you think more about not entrepreneur apps, I think more about medium companies, big companies that build the new, I don't know, kind of ERP, kind of really big system for them with the team of the company to bring the information and know-how in. And on the other side, the pro coders can work together. That's also kind of what the future brings.
Yeah, no,
But,
I totally agree. The point of kind of everyone's getting more technical, but and so the business developer on the team might be able to understand the concepts because the technology, like the level is getting to a point where even though you're more technical, everyone's more technical. The bar for entry is easier and easier to understand for everyone. Duncan or Drew, do you want to go next? What's exciting you at the moment?
I'm ready. It's up to you. Yeah. So yeah, as far as like the future and what I'm most excited for, right now I see these two kind of camps in no code. There's makers and no coders who don't know code, and then there's developers like on the other end of the spectrum. And the makers are super excited. Like no code is the greatest thing for a new maker. It's so amazing, but then they come in and they hit some blocks, because they don't have experience building products maybe. And on the other end, there's the developers who might not want to come down to no code. Now I'm a developer and I fully support and no code is amazing. I think it supports developers, but a lot of developers don't feel that way yet. So what I'm looking really forward to is when those groups come and meet in the middle and then start producing education. So now all of a sudden these new makers are going to have this no code specific education, courses, ecosystems, communities. And I feel like when that hits, when those two communities converge, it's just going to explode.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think, as a developer, you see that, any problem you run into, you can Google it and it's been answered on Stack Overflow, and just the sheer number of queries and tutorials out there, you're like, hey, I don't understand what this, thing does in JavaScript, and there's 100 million articles. So again, it's like seeing those different communities collide is something we can definitely get excited about. Duncan, how about you?
And I'll just add something because yes to everything. If I'll say yes and, I think there will still be a place for folks who are able to kind of take the best of the best and then make that accessible to many. To take a design pattern, right? To take this thing that just needs to be there, used over and over again. It's known to be the best that we have right now for whatever conversion rates or just getting someone to the solution they need quickly. It's I still think there's a place for having that be really easy to get at and just work, just be there and work. And then right where no code go in and actually you could go under the hood and maybe tweak it for your use case or your people. But yes, open source comes to mind too. Being able to just continue to share these things and iterate over them, and be able to, and making all the benefits open source, right? This thing that I'm sure there's examples prior to code, right? But it's so obvious for people who can code that we're able to, and I say I can't code, but developers are able to create these things and share them and pass them on and expand them and make them better. But opening that up to more people where they don't have to code, but they can still create things that other people can benefit from, and then put it out in the world and get it back in a better form. That's just really exciting to me. So I'm hoping we can do both of those. Start with really good stuff, but also continue to iterate and refine on that over time.
Yeah, and I love what you brought up about best practices and the set way of doing something, because I do think that is one potential disadvantage as more and more tools and become more and more Lego block format. And that is, if you're presented with a blank slate and you don't know the best practices, you are a beginner, it can be really hard to build things up the right way. And that is something I think the code community does really well, is you can follow a tutorial and have something built the correct way, and then you can go in and you can kind of tweak every single little item to get it to where you need it to, without having to kind of start at the drawing board. So I think seeing more of that, where it's the best of both worlds, would make a lot of sense. So I know we're coming up on our last minute here. So I think it's time to close, but just wanted to say, thanks to all of you for hopping in. This was a great discussion, and I think we can all agree that it's an exciting time for the no-code space, as it's probably been mentioned before in this conference, but even more so, in the fact that coders and no-coders can work together, and the feud and debate can stop, and everyone can just everyone can work together. Great. All right. Well, thanks everybody, and we'll see you in the rest of the conference.
Good deal. So great to meet everybody.